Peter Parker plans to propose to Mary Jane Watson, who has made her Broadway musical debut. In Central Park, a meteorite lands near the two, and an extraterrestrial symbiote follows Peter to his apartment by attaching to his motorbike. Harry Osborn, knowing Peter is Spider-Man, seeks to avenge his father's death. Using his father's performance-enhancing gas and Green Goblin technology, he battles Peter to an eventual stalemate, developing partial amnesia. Meanwhile, police pursue escaped convict Flint Marko, who visits his wife and sick daughter before fleeing. Falling into an experimental particle accelerator that fuses his body with the surrounding sand, he gains the ability to control and reform his body with sand, becoming Sandman. During a festival honoring Spider-Man for saving Gwen Stacy's life, Peter kisses her to please the crowd, angering Mary Jane. Marko then robs an armored truck and escapes after defeating Spider-Man. NYPD Captain George Stacy, Gwen's father, informs Peter and his Aunt May that Marko is Uncle Ben's true killer. The deceased Dennis Carradine was Marko's accomplice. At his apartment, as Peter sleeps in his Spider-Man suit while waiting for Marko to come out of hiding, the symbiote assimilates the suit. Peter awakens on top of a building, discovering that the symbiote has colored his suit black and enhanced his powers. However, it also brings out darker parts of his personality. Spider-Man locates and battles Marko in a subway tunnel. Discovering that water is Sandman's weakness, he opens a pipe, releasing water that reduces Marko to mud and washes him away. Peter's changed comportment alienates Mary Jane, who also received negative reviews from critics. She shares a tender moment with Harry but leaves in regret. Urged by a hallucination of his father, Harry recovers from his amnesia and forces Mary Jane to break up with Peter. Harry later meets up with Peter and tells him that Mary Jane loves him. Under the influence of the symbiote, Peter confronts Harry and spitefully claims that his father never loved him. As Peter leaves after an ensuing fight, Harry throws a pumpkin bomb at him. Peter deflects it back, disfiguring Harry's face. At the Daily Bugle, Peter exposes rival photographer Eddie Brock, whose fake photos incriminate Spider-Man. Publisher J. Jonah Jameson fires Brock and promotes Peter to staff photographer. Later, Peter brings Gwen to a jazz club where Mary Jane now works. In an attempt to make her jealous, Peter interrupts Mary Jane's performance and dances with Gwen in front of her. Gwen, realizing this, apologizes to Mary Jane and leaves. Spider-Man 3 is a 2007 American superhero film based on the Marvel Comics character Spider-Man. It was directed by Sam Raimi from a screenplay by Raimi, his older brother Ivan and Alvin Sargent. It is the final installment in Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy. The film stars Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker, Spider-Man, alongside Kirsten Dunst, James Franco, Thomas Haden Church, Topher Grace, Bryce Dallas Howard, James Cromwell, Rosemary Harris, and J.K. Simmons. The film also marks the final film appearance of Cliff Robertson before his retirement and death in 2011. Set a year after the events of Spider-Man 2, the film follows Peter Parker as he prepares for his future with Mary Jane Watson, while facing three new villains: Uncle Ben's true killer, Flint Marko, who becomes Sandman after a freak accident, Harry Osborn, his former friend, who is now aware of Peter's identity and seeks to avenge his father, and Eddie Brock, a rival photographer. Peter also faces his greatest challenge when he bonds with an extraterrestrial symbiote, Venom, that increases his abilities but brings out his anger and other negative traits. Development of Spider-Man 3 began immediately after the successful release of Spider-Man 2 for a 2007 release. During pre-production, Raimi originally wanted two villains, Harry Osborn and Sandman. At the request of producer Avi Elrod, he added Venom to the list, and the producers also requested the addition of Gwen Stacy. Principal photography for the film began in January 2006, and took place in Los Angeles and Cleveland before moving to New York City from May until July 2006. Additional pickup shots were made after August, and the film wrapped in October 2006. During post-production, Sony Pictures Imageworks created over 900 visual effects shots. With an estimated production budget of $258, $350 million, it was the most expensive film ever made at the time of its release. Spider-Man 3 premiered on April 16, 2007, in Tokyo, and was released in the United States in both conventional and IMAX theaters on May 4, 2007. The film grossed $894.9 million worldwide, making it the highest-grossing film of the trilogy, the third highest-grossing film of 2007, and was the highest-grossing Spider-Man film until it was surpassed by Spider-Man: Far From Home in 2019. Unlike the previous installments, Spider-Man 3 received mixed reviews from critics, who praised the action sequences and visual effects, but were polarized over the plot and pacing, while also criticizing the film's number of villains, most notably Venom. The perceived overcrowded narrative was later attributed to studio interferences and creative differences between Sony, Raimi, and Elrod. However, in the next years, Spider-Man 3 gained widespread meme popularity on social media. A revised version of the film called Spider-Man 3: Editor's Cut was released on home entertainment and digital download in the 13th of June 2017. It included some previously unseen scenes as well as some deductions or repositions of particular moments. On review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, Spider-Man 3 holds a 63% approval rating based on 261 reviews, with an average rating of 6.20 out of 10. The website's critics' consensus reads, "Though there are more characters and plot lines, and the action sequences still dazzle, Spider-Man 3 nonetheless isn't quite as refined as the first two." Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 59 out of 100 based on 40 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. fourth installment, titled Spider-Man 4, was set to be released on May 6, 2011, followed by a Venom spin-off film, but both were cancelled due to Raimi's withdrawal over creative differences with the writers and producers. The Spider-Man film series was rebooted twice, first with The Amazing Spider-Man, 2012 by Mark Webb and starring Andrew Garfield, and later a new film series set within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU, directed by John Watts and starring Tom Holland, beginning with Spider-Man: Homecoming, 2017. The Venom spin-off was revived in 2016 by Sony and was released in October 2018 as Venom. Maguire, Church, and Garfield reprised their roles in the Marvel Cinematic Universe film Spider-Man: No Way Home, 2021, which dealt with the concept of the multiverse and linked the Raimi and Webb franchises to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. After assaulting the bouncers and accidentally hitting Mary Jane, Peter realizes that the symbiote is corrupting him. Retreating to a church's bell tower and realizing the sounds of clanging metal weaken the creature, Peter removes the symbiote. Brock, who is at the same church, becomes the symbiote's new host. As Venom, Brock locates a still-living Marko and convinces him to join forces to kill Spider-Man. Brock abducts Mary Jane and holds her captive from a web at a construction site, intending to kill her in revenge for Peter ruining him, while Marko keeps police at bay. After Harry refuses to help Peter, Harry's butler reveals that Norman's death was not Spider-Man's fault. While Brock and Marko pin Peter down, Harry arrives to help Peter and save Mary Jane. Brock attempts to impale Peter with New Goblin's glider, but Harry jumps in and is impaled instead. Peter, remembering the symbiote's weakness, assembles a perimeter of metal pipes to create a sonic attack, weakening it and allowing Peter to separate Brock from the symbiote. Peter activates a pumpkin bomb and throws it at the hostless symbiote. Brock, having become addicted to its influence, attempts to save the symbiote, and both are vaporized. Marko explains that Ben's death was an accident that has haunted him, and that everything he has done was to help his daughter. Peter forgives Marko, allowing him to escape. Harry and Peter reconcile before Harry dies from his injuries. After Harry's funeral, Peter visits Mary Jane at the jazz club. They embrace and share a dance,